Let's just jump in. I mean,
I was going to say,
let's get into it.
I mean, here
we're Steven, and we were talking about, so what are the things that we look forward to in 2025 as far as what's going to happen in the health and fitness industry?
Well, what we were doing, I think more specifically, is we came off an episode where we were going into a brand new, executive administration for the United States of America.
Got it. Yeah.
Right. And there was a lot of talk at that time about the Make America Healthy Again movement, the things with RFK, and some of the things that were coming down the pipe, and the things that were being talked about then. There were food dice things that were being talked about then. There was a lot of things, and we kind of weighed in on that and said that in a year we should sit down and talk about this and kind of see what's happened, what's really happened out there. And so I think it's an interesting time to just reflect a little bit on what happened in 2025. Where are we currently in 2026? Where are things going? But there's some super hot topics out there that a lot of people are talking about, and I think they should be. I think it's a good thing. I mean, I think the commentary is fatiguing, if I'm being honest. Again, it's all hot takes, and there's not a lot of substance, and then there's a lot of arguing. And what really bothers me is the internet scientists all of a sudden, or nutritionists, or research scientists or epidemiologists that just jump into comment sections and or are posting things and getting a lot of attention about stuff that a year ago I would have. I haven't changed my mind on a lot of things, right? I always will tell you when I do. Like if I go hard on something and kind of draw a line until you convince me or show me a better way or convince me that I'm wrong, I will gladly accept that I'm wrong, admit that I'm wrong, and adopt that new way of doing things if it's the most efficient, effective way of doing it. I haven't changed my mind very much on it. I've seen some things, both positive and negative. The question you'd asked me, I think, before we hit record was on the one topic, which we'll cover, like, is it net positive or net negative? And I go, I don't think it's either. I think I'm still holding neutral, but.
Did we say what that topic is?
No, let's just jump right in. Let's go. So today,
topics for
so today we're gonna talk about some of the hot things in 2026 as it relates to health and fitness, and we have history in this, so there's some things we can reflect on, and there are some positive things. So I don't want to come at this negative or like I really don't have anything to say at the same time, but it's not all positive, and I'm just that guy that just doesn't get very excited about things. Kind of ever. I try not to get too high or too low. I try to ride even keels as best I can. If anything, I definitely have a character flaw where when something is irritating me, I will go down that rabbit hole pretty deep and get irritated and even angry. That's what's in me. It's something I have to work on a regular basis. And here we are, but I'm not going to be angry in this thing. But particularly, I think the hottest thing that's out there right now that we should probably just kind of touch on, and I don't want to go too crazy on it, but I'm interested in hearing you guys talk about it, and that's the GLP-1 phenomenon. I think I would call it, that's going on right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. GLP-1s. It's funny you're saying that right now, because I feel like, truthfully, I know this is my character flaw. I tend to be a very up and down person. When I'm up, even in my personal life, when I'm having a good day, it's a great day. When I'm having a bad day, it's a bad day. So I know I'm a more extreme. Some people call me dramatic or emotional.
It's good you know that about yourself.
I do know that about myself. Yeah. So I think I've tried to learn to be a little more even keel about how I react to things. Not, even in my personal life, not reacting to things emotionally. I know I definitely have that trait to not take a step back and really look at the entire situation, look at the pros and cons, really think about what my true feelings are about it, and not have that initial knee-jerk reaction. I tend to have that. So even with GLP-1s, when they first started to become popular, a few years ago at this point, it feels like, but they slowly have ramped up more and more. I had a lot of the initial reactions of being a coach for a long time of that, this is cheating. This is you're just taking the easy way out. This is a magic bullet. I kind of put it in, I used to have very similar opinions around things like performance enhancing drugs and things like that, where I'm like, you're just a big fat lazy cheater, for wanting to use PDs and things like that. And I had very similar feelings on that side of things. So for me, it takes me a long time to kind of process all the noise on obviously the internet, but the noise in my own brain that has a lot of static and noise going on all the time, to kind of process the emotions and really look at things logically and see either things in my life of people I know who have experienced, who are on GLP-1s, and people who have had, some people I feel like has had a very good experience, and some are clients. And then I've known people who I feel like are not having a good experience on it. And I think it has allowed me I've come around more than initially, because I feel like I was more against them at the start. And I've come around on the GLP-1s with a lot of nuance. And I think that's the thing that is missed on the web, on the internet, on Instagram, is there's a lot of that nuance around these things is often missed. Is either you're for something or against something. And I'm not really either. I think there's a lot of nuance in how it's applied. So I think that's what we can kind of talk about more for sure. So,
as far as my position, I think initially I just didn't know a whole lot about it. And so I didn't want to sway one way or the other, saying, yes, this is a good thing, or no, it's a bad thing. And so I think really at the end, it depends on who we're talking about and what their history is, as far as their exercise history, their health history, and those types of things. And so I think when it comes to more of something like this, I tend to take a while, like you, to process things and try to gather the information that's out there and do a little research and just kind of sit with it. I think, somebody that I really respect, that's Dr. Bob. He and I have had some conversations about it. And so I think he's been a positive influence as far as my perspective on GLP-1s and where I sit and feeling a little bit more comfortable with them. I did have a conversation the other day too with the nurse about it, as far as, her perspective of GLP-1s, and I get it and I respect it. I think it just really depends on, each individual and their case. So I think that it can be beneficial, but then also I would be very cautious of it. For me, I would be very cautious as an individual if that's something that I wanted to do, because I would be I'd be very hesitant on what I'm putting in my body. And if I'm putting this in my body, what is the expectation? How long am I supposed to be on it? Can I come off of it? What's that going to look like? And what are the downstream effects? So I would have lots of questions. Yeah.
Truthfully, I kind of put it in a more extreme category as when I used to manage a supplement shop and sell people, and people wanted a thermogenic or a fat loss drug, or when people used to get the lap band surgery and things like that, where, okay, this serves a purpose. This may have a purpose. Some people definitely put too much weight in that basket of its purpose and what it'll get you. Obviously, this is a very powerful version of that, where people are seeing they're losing a lot of weight and they're having these feelings, and especially there's a lot of psychology around how they feel internally with food and their relationship with food. But it's my same opinion on those things, that if that's the magic bullet, the only thing that you're changing in your life is you're going to start taking a drug, and you're just going to think that that's going to fix all your problems, that's immediately dead stop whatever the substance is, whatever your goal is, whether it's performance enhancing drugs or another form of a fat loss thing. If that's where you're going to stop and just think that that's a cheat code, then that's where I have the biggest issue with it initially. If you're going to change a lot of different other habits and lifestyle things, I think that's where the conversation can begin. And there could be some positives, and specifically, again, like how you're going about all these other lifestyle factors that are very, very important. So,
yeah, that's my challenge with anything that we're doing from a medically prescribed side of things is what's the process to get there? And what challenges me the most is that people haven't even read their own owner's manual, right, on their own body and how it works. And so they farm that out when all this information is free. It's all available. You can get it if you want to put the time into it, to actually learning about how the body functions. And nobody's going to know your body more than you, yet you're going to farm that out, that knowledge out to somebody else. And so it challenges me when people are making decisions, whether it's about a supplement or a workout program or diet, or in this case, a pharmaceutical, or, the GLP-1. I think it's important to step back when you're looking at this stuff, and I pride myself on doing that, being able to step back and be very objective. And I'll say the same thing I said a year ago, and when this stuff started getting hot, which was about a year ago, and that is, I think it's probably a very good solution for a lot of people. And my basis for saying that is, listen, our country is in the world. I don't know the world at large. I really don't. I just pay more attention to what's happening at home, because that's what I care the most about. It is in very poor shape at so many levels, from a physical level, or physiological perspective, from a mental perspective, from an emotional perspective. It's messy. And to me, in 50 some odd years that I've been on this planet, and I paid attention for quite a bit of that time, it's the worst I've ever seen it. And so for that, I think people need help. And I think that there's a case for this stuff, these types of things, and particularly as we're talking about GLP-1s, I'll say the same thing I said then. I think, if you're at that point where however you got there metabolically, you are in really, really poor physiological condition, I think this is a good thing. I think that, I'm seeing it work. And when I say work, I mean, it's working in many ways. And I think we need to talk about that. But I'm seeing it work for people in positive ways. But I'm also seeing equally it work for people in very unpositive ways. And I asked myself the question, why is that? It's because the owner's manual wasn't read. It wasn't paid attention to by whoever gave you that thing. So, and going back to your statement about like choosing the thing that's going to fix the problem, if you haven't gone through the owner's manual and gone through the checklist of, what's going on here, if the check engine light goes on in your car, there's a whole diagnostics manual, and now that it's all computerized, right? They plug your car in and they figure it out, and a code comes up, and they go, well, this is the main issue, right? But that main issue could be creating lots of other issues, and being overweight, right? Being challenged to lose body fat, being insulin insensitive, having cardiometabolic disorders as a result of those things. There's a lot going on there. And the challenge I have is that when people pick these things without addressing those other things, and I mean that honestly, like really addressing these things. And I think, the place this stems from initially is, again, the individual not understanding how they work, right? And I mean like from basic physiology. You don't have to go through semesters and semesters of school or read textbooks or anything like that, but how does your body work? How do these different systems work? And how do the things that I do and don't do impact those things? And if you're not challenging yourself to really dig deep to, hey, am I doing these things? And balancing it all, or at least trying to find balance, because I think having balance is impossible. There's always going to be a give and take there. But if you're not trying that stuff and then you are doing those things, then you go to this, something like a GLP-1, just understand that may get you part of the equation solved, right, for a little bit. But there are downstream effects of this. And eventually you're going to have to address those other things.
It's not getting to the root cause.
It isn't.
For sure.
It isn't.
Yeah.
And I don't like solving problems without hitting the root cause. Like if we're not trying to solve a problem from the root cause back, what are we doing?
Yeah. You're just sticking Band-Aids on top of a bleeding wound.
I think a lot of times, yes. And I think we're kind of seeing that. The other bigger problem I have with the big problem I have with GLP-1s is how it's being marketed and sold. Mm-hmm. And to your point about the challenges are being reserved, I guess, and maybe skeptical, you didn't use that word about this stuff, is anytime there's money behind something, right? Like you should be very, very concerned about what the message is that you're hearing. And I don't like what I've seen. And I mean, I get where it comes from. It's all dollars driven. It's status driven. And I think that, again, going back to being the right solution for people, I don't think that's the right way to get that message to the people that need that solution. Yeah. And as a result, it gets exploited, right? And it goes back to like, why are you on this stuff? Yeah. Did you do the basic stuff? Did you move the big rocks? Are you even willing to do that? And man, this is America. I'm not going to judge you. You do whatever you want to do. This is, I shouldn't have any say and I won't have any say. It's your body, your choice, right? Whatever you want to do with that stuff is completely up to you. And I'll accept that. Like, again, not judge you for it. At the same time, I'm going to be asking some questions and I'm not going to be afraid to ask those. Yeah. Like, are you addressing this? Did you think about that? Or what are your expectations? And I think what I'm hearing again on the positive and negative side of this stuff is some people are getting a really great quote unquote experience, from this, and equally as many people aren't. And that stuff isn't being talked about. The media isn't talking about that, right? The celebrities aren't talking about that. The 10 commercials I see on Netflix in between every movie isn't talking about that. It's in the super hyper speed. This medication could cause at the end of the commercial, right, or whatever. But there's nobody's really talking about that, and I think that comes up later. It'll kind of come out, and that I worry about for people.
Man, yeah, I was going to mention that of how many times the only time I really see commercials a lot is if I watch a sports game, and I'll see 15, 20 GLP-1 commercials while watching that. So this is America, right? And we advertise pharmaceuticals nonstop. But this is really, for me, I literally have two people in my life. One is a client and one is someone in my personal life who have both gone this route, and they've been on this route for a while. And, the one client is someone that has struggled with their weight a large portion of their life. And they have tried, they have worked with trainers, they've worked with coaches, they've worked with me for a long time. They've made some progress. But then when they start to feel like they're not making progress, and those days that their body hurts and those days that they're mentally and psychologically not there, they've fallen off the wagon several times with me. And for this individual, getting on a GLP-1 was something that was really the wind in their sails that pushed them to not just get on that and then call it a day. They have been more consistent in the gym. They have been more consistent in their training. They've been more consistent in their daily lifestyle habits. They've been more consistent on their nutrition. And it has helped psychologically because this individual, right? It has shown up for them because they have lost a great great amount of weight at this point, and they've maintained a large degree of their muscle mass, which is really, really important. But to mention that, that's some of the big negatives that people aren't talking about. And I think a lot of people don't fully understand that there is almost as many detriments to being severely under-muscled as there is to being severely over-fat.
Yep.
There is, you can argue both ways of there being a lot of very detrimental things with both of those cases. And there's someone else who is in my personal life who they are someone who has used a lot of different medications and procedures and different things in the past. They have been on a GLP-1 for quite some time now. They're someone who actually needed it for the original intent, what it was intended for diabetes management. And this person, and I was just having a conversation with them the other day, is literally, it feels like melting away. This individual has very little strength. They were talking about how they have very little strength to do simple tasks throughout their day because they have very little to no muscle mass at this point, and they are very thin. They're thinner than they probably have ever been, but they literally have such little degrees of muscle mass and strength that they can no longer, in my opinion, properly function for daily life.
Because they're very undernourished.
Very undernourished, and they never really change their lifestyle habits. If anything, it has made this person less active. It has made this person less fit. It has made this person weaker, which again, this is someone who has struggled with a lot of health problems throughout their life, and they've struggled with things like diabetes, and this got them to move the needle in some of those things to managing it. That was the life jacket, but they never learned how to swim, and they never learned how to make changes in their life to lead to positive outcomes. And so I would argue in some ways they're probably worse off than they were from the get-go if they tried to, took the long route and really changed their lifestyle habits. And now they feel stuck because they feel like now, hey, I'm weak and I've lost all this strength and I have severe gastric issues. I have severe nausea issues. I have acid reflux. I have all these problems that I cannot deal with these. I don't even feel strong enough to come off these drugs to be able to manage that.
What does that do to your psychological
Exactly.
state?
And this is something that is very, very is common and that people can deal with. And I've seen other people who started the route and they had severe nausea and severe nausea and severe acid reflux and very low energy, and they've struggled with it. Right. And so some of that is working with a doctor and finding your right dose and all that. But if you're not addressing these other lifestyle habits along the way, this is with great power can come great responsibility of the great power. This is a very powerful drug that can impact you personally, but it can also be very, very negative if you don't handle it correctly. So
yeah, it's interesting. Just talking about like stacking the other things on and making sure that you're handling the other very important big rocks in life. And one of those that just came out was the HSS just started talking about the food guide pyramid. Sorry, I'm laughing because it's been wild probably for the last week when we're recording this. Like it came out last week, and going back to the internet experts, like everybody's been weighing in on it. Everybody's weighing in.
Everybody.
And I'm not saying they shouldn't be, but how you're doing that, I think, is what's very entertaining to me. Like all of a sudden, everybody's a nutrition expert. Everybody's an endocrinologist. Everybody's a bodybuilder. Everybody is a personal trainer. Everybody's a nutrition coach. Like everybody's got their opinions, and I'm down with that. Like if you want to have your opinion, let's go back. It's America, dude. Do whatever you want. But at the same time, like some of it is just ridiculous. But again, being objective, stepping back and looking at the food guide pyramid essentially got flipped on its head, right? Minus kind of what's going on the grains, the whole grains piece. But it's been interesting to kind of watch. I think some people come out with some really good takes on it, but here's my off the top of the head take. And that is, I'll just go back to this. And I don't think it's altogether bad, but again, going back to being skeptical, I'll go back to Ronald Reagan's immortal speech where he said the 9 scariest words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Mm-hmm. And so my challenge always is, if whatever the government's trying to tell me to do with my health, I'm going to be very, very skeptical with. Again, going back to messaging, I do not like how the messaging on it is coming out, as if it's the fix and everybody gets healthy now. And that's always the case because, again, they have something to sell. They have elections to win. They have lobbyist money that they need to collect. They have quote unquote promises that they made that they need to fulfill, and they need to look like they're doing something. And I'm not saying that what's in it is altogether bad. I'm just saying that your delivery fucking sucks. It just sucks. It's been my problem with this administration from the get-go. I won't talk about all the previous ones, but whatever they're doing, like there's probably some good stuff in there, and then there's some bad stuff in there, and then I don't think they deliver the message on any of it very well. So when we're looking at this food guide pyramid, I'm just curious, guys, on your take. I think they did some good stuff with it. Like, and I'll lead with this. I think the protein recommendation finally is kind of where it needs to be. Yeah. As we're getting into stuff. So maybe we talk kind of like what adjustments were made there, kind of main points, and then kind of talk about like what's the downstream impact of this. You know what?
Let me just interject before we start in this. But one of the things I think that's positive that's come out of this is the fact that it's promoting discussion. It's promoting conversation for individuals to talk about the food guide pyramid and to talk about, eating habits and choices that people are making. Whereas, I haven't heard much conversation in the past other than within our industry, pushing protein and, staying away from seed oils or things in moderation and so on and so forth. So as far as like general population, I think that this has definitely helped to kickstart conversations. Yeah, I think the conversation has been for many years is we've just discounted the fitness industry, nutrition industry in general, just discounted the previous food guide pyramid. Just said this is trash. Like we're not going to follow this. Like, and again, then you have the diet tribes that have come in along the way. They've completely they've selected one section out of the food guide pyramid, and that's what they want to go. That's what they've decided to go with, or whatever else. But yeah, it creates discussion beyond this thing sucks and it doesn't fit anybody.
I really like that take, because if I really think about that, I think there's probably a lot of people who, not that they've never heard of the food guide pyramid, but really didn't even know the previous, recommendations from it. And the thing that really popped in my head is I'll have conversations with people all the time, people in my life who aren't even that into health and fitness and controlling their diet and being aware of that. How the old adage is always talk about like, I don't know, it's, they told us eggs were good for us and then eggs were bad for us and now eggs are good for us. So I don't know what the government is saying. So I do like that is, I think has brought up a lot of discussion. I think the one negative that is kind of a bummer is how it has been turned to be very politicized. Where there's people, even I Google it, the first few things are very against what the actual contents of the food guide pyramid is, just because it's from the other side, without being able to take and look at like actually breakdown of, there are things that we all, I think, and I can speak for me specifically, is things that I think are good about the new recommendations and things that I think there needs to be more understanding or probably maybe even not good, right? But a lot of people can't look at that. So maybe more people are discussing it, but they can't objectively look at it because they just see that it's coming from the other side and they automatically, I hope that it doesn't make people have turn the other direction on some of these positives. And like the first positive, I really do think probably the biggest win for me is the protein recommendation. I think that has been under recommended for a long time. And I think seeing that bump, I think is the biggest win as far as the new pyramid.
Yeah, I don't think it. I know it. I mean, the research is compelling. It's unarguable that the previous recommendation of 0.8 grams per kilogram was way too low.
Minimum,
not even that, I would say.
I don't even think keeping you functioning probably.
Yeah. So, it's pushed now. It's up above 1, so
I think it was 1.2 to 1.6.
Yeah,
now.
1.2 to 1.6. So we're closer. And I think that's a good thing.
It's in the right direction.
I think when you look at like the fat recommendation, I think that thing was an interesting one with regard to saturated fat versus unsaturated fat, where it should come from. We can talk about the grains in a minute, but interesting there that what they put in there is very counterintuitive to what we know and what the research tells us about fat and how much fat we need, particularly what creates problems for people. This is, again, going back to research, this is well studied. This is not something that's new. It's been studied for decades. And even since the original food guide pyramid came out, and, there was always all the talk about polyunsaturated fat, saturated fat, and where you should get this stuff, so much so that, and taking a little bit of a side trip here, what that thing says then influences what goes on labels, right? Goes on packaging, it goes on things. And if you may be too young to know this, but we've seen some shifts. Like if you haven't been around long enough, or you don't pay attention when you're grocery shopping, like it's all over the labels. Like whatever the recommendation is now, that's used for marketing, right? To push the products. So going back to the fat content, it's very, very much telling people not to eat saturated fat. And when they are telling them to eat that stuff, the recommendation is eat more butter or dairy fat, specifically butter versus plant oil. Like olive oil or avocado oil, or even things like sunflower, safflower, that kind of thing. And the research just doesn't back up that recommendation very much. So that one's a challenge for me. Again, I think we're at a place right now where the message that you put out and the decisions you make are so critical. We just started this whole thing with how unhealthy our country is, and while the intention might be to make the country healthier, right, and the people, and educate the people and make them more aware, that when you put stuff out like that, and it's interesting what you said there about what side is it's coming from. I mean, there's plenty of people on both sides that think this thing is garbage. That's all I'm really hearing. Like it's just how bad it is and how bad they messed this up. And that's coming from both sides of the aisle, if you will. Maybe more because somebody from one of those sides is looking at it like, and saying what I'm saying, like, well, this is kind of counterintuitive. This doesn't make a lot of sense, right? And for the other side, it's like, well, because it came from that side of the aisle, like we're not going to accept this at all. There's just nothing about it that can be right. That's their belief system. But again, going back to the fats piece, like that one's a little interesting to me, just with regard to recommendation of saturated versus unsaturated, and that type of fat from the saturated side that they're recommending more of. I was kind of looking at it and kind of scratching my head going, this doesn't really hold up. So I'm not sure.
My concern is people hearing this and then taking it to the extreme.
Yeah, man, they always do. They always do. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting because we're having this discussion too. I feel like there's been a trend I think there's been more understanding too of some of the nutritional value of things that tend to have higher saturated fat, like beef. That has more micronutrient density than, something like a lean chicken breast. And so I think a lot of people, it's kind of, I was talking to Cece about kind of like a carnivore adjacent diet that a lot of people at least post that they eat, where it's, it's a lot of saturated fats, a lot of red meats, it's a lot of eggs, it's a lot of full fat dairy. They mix in now some avocado and some honey and some berries and things like that. And I think, it just like anything that diet should come back to is it's about balance, and it's about weighing the pros and cons of each situation. I do still think there is enough data that shows that high levels of saturated fats can have a negative impact on cardiovascular health.
Particularly with how we opened up the show talking about GLP-1s and the cardiometabolic health of our country currently.
Exactly.
Like you 100% will be impacted by that saturated fat.
Exactly.
In a way that's likely not positive, right? If you are in an overweight, low insulin sensitivity state, inflammation or chronic inflammation, systemic inflammation, and have onboarded some other things like early on, like being pre-diabetic, like having some low level of cardiovascular disease or atherosclerosis, like these are, and you're on medications, right, to manage those things. I that 100% just jumps off the page of me, and I'm just going, guys, like if you're going to say stuff like that, there has to be there has to be some context to what we're talking about here.
Yes.
And there hasn't been, just that this is going to change the world. And we made the change.
Yeah.
Look at us, the man on the stage.
When it feels, they recommend, and even some we were watching pointed this out, they recommend using beef tallow and butter because they talk about, I don't even know if they mentioned that, maybe there's more nutritional value to these things, but then they also still kind of recommend keeping your saturated fat low, which I think a lot of people, there's confusion of, it is the trade-off of sometimes within a healthy balance, there is more nutritional value to a good healthy beef, right? There is. But again, you need to be aware of your saturated fat total. So if what I think this has done, it's like, sometime last year when the fast food changed, they started using beef tallow for their fries. I think maybe the intention, if I want to look from the best place in my heart, I think the intention is we want to impact people's health. And look, there's maybe some more nutritional value in beef tallow. But I think the net negative of it vindicating people to, I can go now eat a bunch of fries and I can eat this and not worry about my saturated fat. That's where you're going to run into a lot of problems. They are going to run into a lot of problems. So that's where I think the nuance of the food guide pyramid and understanding these different things versus just following them blindly. That's where I think a lot of the mistakes are going to come and will come. So
yeah, I think there's an interesting point made by a guy that we mentioned quite frequently on the show, Lane Norton. I think he does a really good job. He's actually a nutrition scientist. This is kind of what he does. He lives and breathes this stuff. He made a really good point, and that was inherently there's nothing wrong with the original food guide pyramid. The problem is people just don't freaking follow it. Yeah. They just don't eat that way, right? It's going to be the same with this one, right? There wasn't a problem with the food guide pyramid. It was is what people were doing within that food guide pyramid, right? And that's an individual thing. And it's going to be exactly the same for this. So I don't put a lot of stock in that, but I also understand how it changes policies, right? It influences markets. It influences finance, right? It influences the messaging that will then come out, that will then wind itself right back here at our front door, where we are going to have to untangle yet another sticky web of, well, I heard this and this is what the government's telling me, and so this is the right thing to do. Is it though? Right? Let's take a hard look at this. And then this creates challenges for coaches, for healthcare practitioners out there to then be able to sit down and talk to somebody if they're trying to give them the right recommendation for them inside and outside of whatever the food guide pyramid might say based on their very particular individual circumstance. And again, whenever you try to put it into a box, it becomes really messy for people. And that's the thing that challenges me with this. So it's not about the food guide pyramid. It's about what we're teaching people about it. And that's what I said a year ago. I said, there's probably some messages that we could be putting out that would be a lot better than just saying we're going to take food dyes out, right? And we're going to change the food guide pyramid and this is going to change things. No, it won't. It's not going to change anything. You have to change people's awareness and you have to change their behaviors, right? Those are the things that need to happen. And, doing these kind of things, the behavior that's changing right now is this anger and this angst that's coming out about it. And again, the behaviors of, well, this just gives me more content to post on social media and they'll be talking about this for the rest of the year, right? And we'll sit down next year and there'll be things to talk about, with regard to it. Meanwhile, you're leaving people confused, you're leaving them unhealthy, you're leaving them inactive, and you're leaving them unaware of the owner's manual for their own body. And that's a challenge for me. I don't think that this changes any of those things. And for me, I'm frustrated by it. Yeah. I don't have anything else to say about it other than that. I'll be honest.
I think that's a good place to leave that topic. But it makes me think about kind of our next topic is AI. Yeah. And AI's influence on feeling, you mentioned a lot of people who are, they're now all of a sudden personal trainers or dietitians or just health experts. And I think, some of that is really rooted in social media. Self-proclaimed dietitians.
There are real
dietitians who are actually
accomplished
educated.
Dietitians out there. Yeah.
If we haven't said this too, this will kind of dive into this topic for me more, but it's frustrating being someone who's been in the industry long enough now. Like I'm over a decade at this point. of the amount of time and effort that I've put into seeking education from my undergrad, from the, 50 to 100 plus certifications and workshops that I have done to educate myself. Hours and dollars, thousands of dollars every single year that I invest in time that I invest into my education. And the fact that now people feel that they are now an expert because they saw a 30-second video on TikTok, or they typed it in ChatGPT and they got a response, and now they can fully trust that they are an expert in this specific topic. And so it's frustrating for me. But I don't want to be a complainer. I don't want to be a whiner of like, you got to trust me. But I think now we're starting to see there's stuff coming out with AI of AI lying to people, of AI spreading some false information, even though people, I have people here in the gym that they think that, I typed it. Probably in the last week or two, I probably have had 10 different conversations of someone saying to me, I asked ChatGPT and it said this. And they took that, they ran to the bank with it, and they trust everything that it says. And hopefully people can appreciate what people who are actually educated and are professionals in the field, and not throw out everything that they're saying out the window, and understand that there's a lot more nuance to topics. There's a lot more individuality to topics. And that also, just because this all-powerful AI is saying this thing does not mean that we can trust everything it says. So have you even seen some of the videos of the issues? Like, there's a video that came out the other day of AI very confidently saying that strawberry is spelled with 2 R's.
No, it's saying it's spelled with 1 R.
It's saying it's spelled with 2 R's, strawberry, right. Sorry, but there's 3 R's.
Right.
And there's this video of this guy who's a fitness guy, and he had this I think he had gotten it from someone else, but his video is blown up. It's like 14 million views or something at this. And he literally was going back and forth. And I didn't even know this because I'm a big old fuddy-duddy with technology, that you can have a verbal conversation with ChatGPT now. You can do talk to text and then give it a voice, and it literally almost sounds like a person's talking to you. It's very interesting. Because again, I'm a fuddy-duddy.
It's the same voice you get when you pick up that spam call.
Exactly. Yeah. The 15,000 spam calls I get a day. And he's having this conversation it feels like it goes on for a good 2 minutes, trying to explain and get the AI to understand that strawberry is spelled with 3 R's. And the AI is, I understand how you would feel that way. I get why you'd understand that. See, if you think about it, or if you go, there's a 1 R right after the initial T, and then there's 1 R right before the last Y. And it goes back and forth. And no matter how he lays out the logic, the AI says that strawberry has 2 R's in it. And that's an example of the AI is generated in a way to support arguments. It's generated in a way to validate your opinions. It's generated in a way that it is self-learning. There's no one controlling this AI at this point. It is self-learning. And there's another video that I saw again, and I know we're talking about videos and I'm getting these from videos. So there's obviously there could be some, needs to back up the data or the confirmation bias of these. But there is a video of someone asking, and I've heard this a lot, where AI will come out and say that it has studies supporting a specific claim that it is making. And then when you ask the AI to cite these studies, it cannot find any of these studies. Yeah. Right? Have you heard that too? Mm-hmm. So I've seen that from multiple people who, studies show that, it takes 6 weeks to learn a habit. Okay, can you show me those studies? And then the AI says, I cannot find any studies to support this, right? So when you're going to the AI to ask for your whole nutritional program, or your whole exercise program, or your rehab plan, or your pretty serious health concerns that you have, or thing in your life, and you're asking it, and it is giving, it's spewing out an answer that sounds really, really professional, and really, really accurate, and really, really backed, and sounds really nice, and you trust that without even thinking to question it. I think that's where there's a lot of these things that, for me, that's an old fuddy-duddy who often thinks about just going and living in the middle of the woods and forgetting about technology. It scares me a lot, if I'm being honest.
When anybody says studies say, just blink it, I always am like, studies?
Yeah,
Tell me.
Which I've said that before.
Pulling his eyes.
This machine is just pulling in just information that's out there, right?
For sure.
It's what it's fed and what it can crawl, right?
Mm-hmm.
And pull in. So if there's a million posts out there that say a habit takes 6 weeks to form,
mm-hmm.
right? Studies support that it takes 6 weeks to form some type of a habit. because a million people have written that a million times because somewhere in their head, they've heard that before and they took that with a grain of salt, right, without actually looking into it. Is there any research or are there any studies on this? I remember hearing it takes 30 days to form a habit. Like I even probably said that to people, right, as a coach, when I first started, because that's what was taught to me, right, by the person that heard that from somebody else or read it in some book who was standing at the front at the pulpit, right, who was teaching the information for the test that I was going to have to take. So it sticks and it gets passed on. It's just crawling that information, it's pulling it in. Interesting though, that you ask for like, what are those studies? It doesn't know because it's probably, those aren't being put out there, right? There's nothing to crawl, right? Because nobody's talking about it, right? And nobody's feeding that information into the machine. Here's what I have to say about AI. Like, first, I have a question. Are you surprised by any of this, Ryan?
Am I surprised? I say no, I'm not surprised, but like we mentioned earlier, I've had kind of an emotional reaction to AI for sure. And I have a lot of reservations about AI and I have lots of conversations about that. So I think there is some personal bias for me.
Yep.
So I can tell you, am I surprised about it? The first time it was presented to me when one of my clients was like, so I went to ChatGPT and I asked it one of the questions of a topic that she and I were talking about and I was giving her my opinion on it. I was like, what?
Yeah. And it gave an opinion that you're like, that's bullshit.
It gave her the same response that that
you did.
Gave her.
And you're like, now you'll trust the AI, but not trust the person.
I was offended.
Okay. Let me put this together. This is, you'd been having a conversation about something, nutrition,
I think it was like nutrition related
or whatever
and
else.
She did not fully
happens to coaches, this happens to parents all the time, right? Yep. Right. And so they're telling their kid. And then one day that kid comes home because they heard it from somebody else. And they're like, you'll never believe what I learned today. Like I learned this thing and you're just looking at them like, are you even my kid? Like we've been having this conversation for 5 years and now you heard it from somebody else.
Yeah. But that's happened with me and a client before, where I'm telling this client this, the same, giving them the same message time and time again when it comes up. And then he hears it from another client or another professional. And I'm like, okay. But I didn't have the same emotional response. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But when she went to AI and then she
confirmed it.
I was like, what? I was offended.
It's a little bit feels like a slap in the face if I'm being honest.
So the reason I asked the question is my statement about AI is, and I'll go back to when it first started coming out, because I was the same. I was very reserved with this because of the things that you just said. You just articulated basically all the reasons or all the reasons in my head where I thought this could be a very good idea and also a very bad idea. I think it's very powerful. I do use AI. I think you cannot operate right now in the world of business or anywhere else without some level of that being involved, whether you want it to or not. It's there. It's embedded into everything. I mean, these little computers we carry around in our pocket all day long, they're constantly functioning on that. The things that you're pulling up, your email is now tied into AI. You can't get on a conference call without AI taking notes for you or, transcribing for you in the back. Everything's trying to be simplified and AI'd to death. So this is what I'd say. Like, I think there's a lot of positives in it. There's a lot of power to it in terms of organizational structure, but it will give you what you feed it, just like anything else. Like it's just like your body. You'll get out of that what you put into it, right? It's the same as, what you put into your workouts. It's the same as what you put into your education. You'll get back from it what you put into it. So if what you're looking for is the quick answer and that's what you ask it to give you, that's what's going to give you. And to no end, I would just say this, like, I freaking told you so. I'm not surprised by any of that at all.
Yeah.
And so I think having a certain level of skepticism is a good thing about what you're getting out of AI. And the word I lean to is discernment. And discernment is based on knowledge and experience and your ability to make good judgment about things. And I think that's where a lot of people are very, very challenged. Where does the judgment piece get flawed? It comes with the confirmation bias that they're looking for.
Yep.
And to your point, that is essentially what AI is designed to do, right? It's to make you feel good about, it's not going to be argumentative, right? It's going to be very passive and trying to give you the information that it has to give you. While there's no emotion attached to it on the other side for them, they had to program something in, I'm sure, right, from the get-go. And that was, we need this to be a non-argumentative debate platform. Well, I know you can debate, in AI at some level. These things are going to make it really challenging for people to make good decisions. And so tying this back into the health and fitness side of things, again, It just means having to untangle the sticky web, the stickier web now that exists because of the availability and the accessibility to access these kinds of things and this kind of information. And where does it come in here? Like, well, we need coaches anymore because I could just ask AI and AI will tell me all the right things to do. It absolutely at no level will take into account your individuality. It cannot know things. It cannot make that connection with regard to what's very specific about you and how you need to apply this specific thing, whether that's, again, a nutrition concept or a fitness concept or whatever it is. Like I've played around with it. I've seen what it's kicked back to me specifically. I think if you feed it the exact right information, you can get some really good stuff back. But then you have to lean to, well, what specific information is Joe Blow feeding it to get answers, for themselves. So again, going back to the education, the time, the investment that you've spent in understanding what questions to ask and how to ask those questions, I think the better you are at that, right? Likely, the more accurate information you can get out of it. But you got to be very, very careful. And I think the planet needs to be very, very careful with this, and particularly as it goes to health and fitness, particularly on the health side. I mean, we're starting to see these stories come out about people putting in things like how much of this medication or how much of this illicit drug can I take or should I take in terms of dosages, and people are overdosing, and things like that. I think you kind of get what you deserve there, if I'm being honest. It's very unfortunate. Like I'm empathetic, that somebody's, been damaged by this or even lost their life over it. But at the same time, like, come on, man, like we got to be smarter than that. And the challenge I have with it is unfortunately, I don't think people are as smart as they think they are in a lot of cases. That's not everybody. But I think it's going to continue to lead to challenges for people like us and otherwise, particularly healthcare professionals, to navigate this world now that exists. And I'm not looking forward to it. I'm really not. Like, I'm glad all the information is out there for free, right? But at the same time, I think it can be problematic, and here we are.
Yeah, I really think it's the apex of, what we've been building to over the last, let's even say 100 years, but, even more recently, the last 50 years of information is there, but that does not mean that individuals have the knowledge and the wisdom.
It doesn't necessarily mean it's good information.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And I want to be clear that this isn't coming from a place of someone I'm not afraid of AI taking my job.
Neither am I.
All right. Yeah. Trust me. We talked about the health status of, people in the US. I'm not worried about me not having a job. I think a lot of the people who are making the AI, probably those are the ones who are going to lose their job sooner rather than later. But I think it's another apex of the issues that I have with AI in general. I think are related very deeply into the issues I have with technology is the convenience of things
and the dependence
of things.
Mm-hmm.
The people, it's been building over the years, and then this is just the apex. This is just the tipping point for me of people not being willing to perform tasks themselves, and the whole argument is it'll perform these tasks that we don't need a human to do. So I'll have more time to do things that are more important. Well, I really don't think that people are using their spare time to write poetry and, learn an instrument and exercise all day. Get outside, sun. Right? They're not. People are using it to binge watch and be on their phones and doom scroll. And I think it's just the apex of, no, I'm not saying everyone needs to, make all their food by hand ingredients and have their own garden necessarily, but the ability for your brain, not even from a time management, from how these processes work in your brain to be able to perform tasks. And I've even seen this in myself of my dependence on these things of, it's hard for me sometimes to think of how to do some simple math because I've become so reliant on devices and even, back to a calculator of how to calculate these things for me. And our memory retention, our ability to, again, perform these.
You're not training the brain's a muscle.
You're not training the muscle. So many people I know have such bad memory right now. They have such inability to do these simple tasks, let alone their health status of how much they move and how much they're able to do things, let alone, we could get, dopamine receptors and your pathways for, people aren't able to be bored anymore. And I think there's a lot of downstream effects with that, of being able to perform tasks yourself, of being able to, pull up your bootstraps and actually be the one doing the work.
Problem solve
outside of just, that it saves time or doesn't save time. I think it's like, for me, it's when people complain about needing to do other subjects in school when they're growing up. Like, why am I need to take this math class? I'm not going to ever use this theorem later, right? But I think what that does is it develops these pathways in your brain. Math teaches you how to think logically, right? And art teaches you how to think from a more, outside the box perspective. And all these things have value. Not that you're going to remember that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell for everyone, but that it teaches these pathways that are really important for the human experience to be a full functioning capacity, human that can communicate well, have good discernment, have good wisdom, and a good health status because they're active and they do things and they're able to complete tasks that are challenging outside of just relying on technology and a device.
I'll make sure to tell Kelly that when it comes to the math thing.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
That's a solid take, man.
Yeah.
I can get on board with that. It's so many levels, and I think the generations that have adopted this, like you're seeing, like the older generations start to adopt things sooner, right? Without the previous knowledge of kind of how we got there and how that thing works, right? So I think, before you could kind of be ignorant to it, and now it's just integrated into kind of everything, and they may not understand that. I mean, there's a lot of talk right now about the sort of the geriatric population out there that has a screen time problem.
Oh,
right?
For sure.
And with all the AI videos and the AI newsreels.
And they don't know if it's AI too.
They have no idea.
Yeah.
They have no idea. I was just having a conversation with a client, the other day with his older father, had come to this video and goes, "Hey, can you believe this?" And his son looked at him, or the client looked at him and goes, "Dad, that's totally AI. That isn't even real."
I even have a hard time with that.
You sent me a video the other day and she's like, "Look at this." And it was completely AI. Yeah.
It's scary. And so going back to how your brain is shaped and, what your expectations are and how you come to decision-making and what those decisions are once you finally make it, like how is that influencing it? Like I said, I told you so. Like this is going to be a scary, scary thing. And, so I worry about people. All I can say is, like, I step back and it just makes me really go back to that word discernment and just go, I got to look real hard at this for a little bit and not make any decisions based on this, not make any judgments based on this. I'll just look at this and go, that's interesting. I'll think about that. And usually, I trust that, again, the learning processes that I went through and my ability to go maybe access information somewhere else in different ways gives me a leg up at some level without patting myself on the back and going, I think I'm going to try and figure this one out on my own because I think that's the better way to do things anyways. And then when you reach that point of where, like, I'm not really sure, then go to the next thing. But the next thing always is AI. Like, I think that's problematic for us.
What do you think that we might see in 2026 as it pertains to AI and health and fitness?
I mean, look, another topic we want to talk about is like the gamification of fitness and your health. And I think there's some positives in that, but I think AI certainly takes that over, right? And with all the data collection that's gone on for years with like these wearable devices that we have and things like that, I think all of that stuff's starting to get, put out there. Right? Like, what should your targets be? Like, you're being given defined goals of where you should be. This is arranged for this. This is arranged for that. This is good. This is bad. It's very metrics driven. I mean, it's very data driven to a certain extent. And I guess what I would expect is just more of that. I mean, and again, going back to your statement about not being able to be bored, people just don't have that, or they don't have any, they have very little intrinsic drive or motivation to do certain things or do it because you should be doing it versus I do it because it makes me feel good. And again, the feel good part of it, the feelings part of it. We've watched the gamification of fitness and health very specifically with, like, I was listening to a podcast today, as a matter of fact, and they were talking about the Whoop and how everybody on this person's team wears the Whoop and they're competing for their sleep scores. Right. They're all connected within a group and they're using that kind of as motivation. It's like, oh, I see that your sleep score was a 4, on a scale of 1 to 10. You think you're going to make the workout today and beat me, kind of thing, like that kind of stuff. And I'm like, this is weird to me.
Yeah.
Like, this is weird to me. Like, just go to the gym, dude. Like, just go to the gym and work out. But I think that continues. And I think obviously the technology that's embedded in our phones and our watches and our wrist wearables and whatever else that we're strapping to us continues to draw people in. And I've said this before when wearables came out, I think like information is good, but what do you do with that information? And that's the challenge that I have. Like, what will AI do with this information, and how will it influence people down certain paths with regard to how they approach their health and wellness, and particularly their fitness? What decisions will they make based on what they're being shown, told, and the algorithm that they drop into, and what that does, and what are the outcomes? I used to say, just do something, right? If just doing something is better than doing nothing, but I don't. I've changed my mind on that, right? I've totally changed my mind on it, because that's not necessarily true. Like, if you're going to do something, it needs to be meaningful. It needs to be
have intention.
It needs to have intention. There needs to be, like, you should have like a really well developed why behind why you're doing what you're doing, and have some logic to back that stuff up to how you're making decisions. And again, to your point, like, this kind of takes the logic part out of it, because you were talking about math and the theorems, right? Like, it teaches you how to make those kind of decisions. But if you're just going to the easy button, or letting somebody or something else, something, that being AI, tell you what to do, I think it's a dangerous prospect. Am I worried about losing my job or how that might impact me? Like, from a business perspective and a livelihood perspective? No. I know what the value is, what I can provide, and I know it's not for everybody. And, at the same time, like, I'm fully confident I continue to help people in the way that they need to be helped, irrespective of where AI fits into the process. Usually that'll only fit in for me in my head right now, of having to say, I know what you read right there. Let me tell you why that's not appropriate for you, or how something you might want to think about with regard to the information that you just gave me.
Between these three main topics that we were just talking about, I think the common theme is all these things can be tools, from GLP-1s to understanding the food guide pyramid to AI and gamifying. And these can be tools to help you on your health and fitness journey. And maybe they do add 1%, or maybe they are the initial wind, in your sails. But at the end of the day, like, they can't do the work for you. The wearable, you can track all the data you want. You can get all these scores. But if you don't actually do anything and do with the data, and you don't actually have a plan and actually do the work and show up, it can't do it for you. The GLP-1 can get things moving, but we've talked about that. Not only will it not do the work for you, it can actually be a detriment if you're not doing the work. And with the food guide pyramid, again, that's just another representation of information being there, but what do you do with that information, and what discernment do you have when you're applying that? And I think that's where coaching will still exist outside of AI, because I think people need help with the psychology and if I say it, the motivation and the application of actually doing the work and showing up.
Yeah, I've said this before, but not in a long time, and that is, for a long time in my life, especially when I moved into more of the endurance sports and particularly training and competing at some level, I got married to my devices, and they were much different than they are now, right? Way different. And to the extent that I couldn't do a workout, like in my head, I couldn't go on a workout or ride or run, a swim, a weightlifting session without that device on it. And if I did, I had anxiety about it. Like, like the workout didn't happen.
Yeah.
And I was dependent on that from a psychological perspective. And at some level, I was dependent on it from a programming perspective. And it took my head out of the thing that I was doing. I'm out on a bike ride. I'm going through some of the, as an example, one of them was in a gorgeous environment. It was with some friends. It was a week-long trip, went to the Eastern Sierras. We climbed all the high peaks out there. It was like 32,000 feet of vertical in like 5.5 days or something like that. Awesome scenery out there on the east side of Sierras, kind of like south of Mammoth. If people know that drive up to 395. It was great. And the whole time I'm looking at my damn watch, right? Which was strapped to my computer or strapped to my handlebars or whatever while we're riding. And at the end of the day, I'm researching it, I'm downloading all. And what I recognize is like, I am paying more attention to this than to the thing I'm doing, how I'm feeling, what I'm getting out of it, the time with my friends, the fitness that I was getting out of it was going to show up anyways, right? And it drove me nuts. And I immediately went home from that trip and I stripped everything off of my bike. Got rid of all the downloads onto my computer. I said, I'm never riding with the device. I'm never running. I'm never swimming with the device ever again. And I didn't for 10 years until I bought this thing, right? I got a Garmin now. I bought it. I was very hesitant to do it, but there were some things I wanted to put in there. recognizing that the technology had changed a little bit, some things I wanted to track. And I did that for a little while. And you know what? There wasn't really anything in there for me. Like, it was interesting because I had learned how to not be dependent on that, to understand how my body was feeling and respond appropriately to that. Okay, yeah, maybe I got a little bit more depth of knowledge because of the thing I do to make a living and whatever else. But it was very like, what's the word I'm looking for? Freeing. Like liberating to a certain extent, because I could go out and I could enjoy my exercise. I was more in tune with what my body was doing. I wasn't dependent on the device to tell me what to do or how to do it, or keep me from doing the thing that I needed to do, which is what I think the devices do more than ever now, which is, oh, well, you're not recovered, so you shouldn't work out hard.
Yeah.
Nobody needs very few people on the planet need an excuse to work out less hard.
Yeah.
Right. Like, most people are not overtrained. Right? The majority of people are not overtrained. We use that term frequently, but more what that means is under-recovered. And so why are they under-recovered? It's not because they're overtrained. They're under-recovered because they don't sleep enough. They eat like a raccoon, or they don't eat at all, right? They're not managing the other things in their life, the other big rocks. But it's, again, now it's like, oh, well, I work out less hard today or I work out harder because I'm fully recovered. Again, leaving those other things out because they're just not in tune with what's going on. So, again, I think that's what AI does, is it draws people into the game. It draws people into meet the metric, not to be healthy, right? At the end of the day, whatever that means for that person. Again, it's a tool. You mentioned that these are tools that we can use. Same with AI. It's a tool that can be used as long as it's being used appropriately. And that's a very broad term.
Yep, I was just
right?
gonna say.
It's a very broad term. I think it can be valuable, but again, dependency and reliance are things that I'm challenged by, and I just see it getting more and more like that. That's what I see happening in 2026. I don't think I'll change my mind on it at all. And I bet in a year from now we'll sit down and we'll be able to cite tons of examples, and there'll be new companies and new devices out there. Be like, yeah, here we go, right? And I won't be mad about it. I'll just be the same. I'll just be like, oh, here we are. You know, it just continues to evolve, and we continue to adjust to the evolution, and so will the humans, and there will be positives and there will be negatives. There's actions and there are consequences. As always. So I guess we could leave people with this: as you're moving into this year and you're looking at all the stuff that's going on. You know, you got people in your lives, you're a coach, you're a client, you're neither of those things, and you're looking at things like GLP-1s and the food guide pyramids, and you know, you're trying to navigate through this AI thing, and you're looking at how do I make fitness more fun or more gamed, you know, to a certain extent. I just use your brains, right? You use your brains in terms of how you're approaching this stuff, and ask questions first of yourself, right? And then go out and maybe start listening to what the other, you know, the contrary statement is, or the contrary kind of overview or outlook or report is on that thing, and start to make some more, be more discerning is the word I would say. That said, I don't hate any of it. I'm kind of just meh, you know, whatever, you know, whatever you want to do. It's America. You do you. I don't know. What do you think in 26, man?
You know, that's a good question. I'm trying to be discerning about this, but honestly, I hope there's definitely always two parts of me. Like I said, I'm an extreme person. I see a lot of positives coming out of all three of these things, and I really hope that the positives, you know, continue to prevail and change people's lives. But I have a lot of reservations about all of these categories as well. I think, you know, take a moment to step back, in your life, take a moment to step back away from technology and all the chaos and all the noise, and don't be afraid to really think through things and discuss things, and be around other people who are like-minded, be around other people who have different opinions, and be willing to learn and grow, and not, you know, put all your eggs in one basket right away. So,
Cece?
I don't really know what I have to say. I think I'm pretty even keel right now. I'll be interested to see what happens and where we are a year from now. Things take time for change to happen. So maybe this is, you know, an impetus for a road of people becoming healthier versus not being sicker. But I mean, time will tell.
Yeah, I got you. I mean, I hope it's that way.
Yeah.
I mean, I really want these things to help people. Like, I really do. Again, I can just kind of sit back and I go, well, I have equal experience on both sides, to where it's been, very positive for some and not very positive for others. And so I think that's maybe the takeaway. Like there's no one size fits all. So, you got to figure it out for yourself. If you need help with that, with regard to, how you're programming your nutrition, where you are with the training program, where you are with your supplements, what makes the most sense for you? How much recovery do I need? Am I there? Am I not there? That's what we're here for. Reach out, hit us here. We're happy to have a conversation just like this, just like the one we're having now with you. And we'd be happy to help you.